So I'm doing my project on hayim-nahman-bialik, who I was really excited when I started researching because I also am very interested in poetry, and Hayim is a pioneer of Hebrew poetics. So he was born in 1873 in a small town in Ukraine, and so early on, which influenced him for the rest of his life, was he was orphaned at a young age, and he was brought up by his religious grandfather who imposed a strict Jewish education, which eventually grew into him being a very smart, intellectual, almost prodigy young man. And so when he was 17, he went to a yeshiva, which is where he started to write poetry and growing a connection to Zionism. So both his poetry and Zionism started to grow together at the same time. And so after he left the yeshiva, he returned back to his town in Ukraine and continued to write poetry. And so in nationalist poetry, you might think that the poems would be more patriotic or prideful, but his poems are very sorrowful and hopeless. So I was going to read the ending of his poem Alone. Imprisoned beneath her wing, my heart longed for the light. She buried her face on my shoulder, and a tear fell on my page. Dumbly she clung and wept, her broken wings sheltered me. Scattered to the four winds of heaven, they are gone, and I am alone. It was an ancient lament, a suppliant cry I heard in that loss and silent weeping, and in that scalding tear. So some things I noticed in the poem were the iambic pentameter, so it's like the rhythm of the poem and how what syllables are stressed in the line. So the line like her broken wing sheltered me, it's structured so that it has a rhythm. So you can tell how thoughtful the poet was when writing. So his poetry connects his life of sadness and loss of his parents to the loss and tragedies that the Jewish people have faced. So themes in his poems are exile and loneliness, which is felt personally, but then also felt on a larger scale in the scope of the entirety of Jewish people. And he also wrote in Hebrew, which was not a common thing to happen. It was before that Hebrew was really born again and before the state of Israel. So that is hugely important to Hayim. And so he essentially pioneered the Hebrew poetic tradition, and that is his legacy, as being one of the beginning forces of modern Hebrew poetry. He died in 1934 of a heart attack in Vienna. So he never lived to see Israel be created, but we still remember his poetry today.